Hey, shall we continue our halacha talk?
Let's do it.
So last week we began talking about the Melacha of dash, and we said last week the largest topic of dash is actual schita of fruits, of juices, into food, into drinking. Let's start talking about that. So the Gemara defines between three different types of fruits.
Yes, the Gemara gives three categories of fruits. The Gemara says that grapes and olives, to squeeze those would be a problem in HaTorah. Pomegranates would be only midirabanan, and uzradin, unclear exactly what those are. We'll see, it doesn't really matter in a minute, but uzradin are permitted. What's this all about? Now, to clarify here, the potential issue with squeezing fruit is that you are mefarik, you are extracting a mashke, a liquid, mitoch ochel, out of food. You have a grape, and now you're extracting the juice that's a liquid, and that is a problem of mefarik, as we've seen. Now, what is unique about grapes and olives that they would be the problem min haTorah? Some Rishonim explain that it is only wine and olive oil that actually have the status in halacha of a mashke, of a liquid, because we find in other areas of halacha, for tumah and tara and other things, that they are considered liquids. For other fruit, when you take out the juice, that's just a part of the juice. The orange juice, for example, is not a separate mashke. It's just like cutting the orange in half. The orange has an edible part, it has a juice part, but it's not considered halachically a liquid. That's the opinion probably of the Ran. However, Rashi seems to disagree, because Rashi explains that olives and grapes are different because its normal use, which seems to mean its optimal use, is to be squeezed. All other fruits, their optimal use is not necessarily to be squeezed. Are there any practical differences between these two positions? Well, the obvious one would be if a fruit nowadays would become optimally used to be squeezed. And this is the big discussion with oranges, perhaps Tropicana oranges, where the primary use of those oranges is to be squeezed. They're not meant to be eaten, and perhaps then it would be a problem min haTorah. We'll see soon some practical differences between whether something is prohibited min haTorah or midrabanan. But interestingly, this does become relevant which bracha to make, and the Chazon Ish was of the opinion, based on all this, that one should make a bori pri ha'etz on orange juice, since the optimal use of the oranges is to make juice. Many disagree with the Chazon Ish for a variety of reasons, not the topic for now, and the common practice is in fact to say shahaka.
Okay, so that's the difference between grapes and olives, which are unique and special for their reason, and rest of the fruits. But what is the difference between pomegranates and uzardin? And what do we actually categorize as uzardin?
So it's clear from the Gemara, as summarized by the Rambam and also in the Mishnah Berurah, that the difference between pomegranates and the other fruit is that there are some places where pomegranates are squeezed for their juice. And therefore, even if in your location, it's not necessarily the primary function of pomegranates to make juice, since in other places it is, Chazal didn't want it getting confused with grapes and with olives, and therefore they prohibited midrabanan to squeeze any such fruit. However, for uzradin, where nobody would squeeze them for their juice, it's permitted, because even if you're the one crazy guy who squeezes it for juice, Chazal weren't worried about that. Weren't worried about it confusing with the din min haTorah of squeezing olives and grapes, and therefore it is permitted. Post can point out, though, nowadays almost everything is squeezed for juice somewhere in the world, and since that is the case, almost every fruit would be a problem, albeit midrabanan, to squeeze out on Shabbos. So in summary, min haTorah, it is a problem to squeeze probably only grapes and olives. All other fruits would fall in the category of pomegranates of the Gemara and be prohibited midrabanan, because somewhere in the world, the primary use of those fruit are for juice. Now, there's one fruit that's different than the rest, and that is a lemon. Because even though the normal use of a lemon is to squeeze it out, the Rush notes that nobody drinks lemon juice. And therefore, the Rush says a lemon is actually permitted to be squeezed on Shabbos. Absolutely mutter. Pretty fascinating. Now, the Beis Yosef notes that he heard in Egypt, and this is 500 years ago, people drink lemonade. Should that make a difference? So the Beis Yosef gives two reasons why it does not. Number one, even though people have lemonade, still nobody drinks lemon juice plain. It's already mixed with water and sugar and other things, and therefore, says the Beis Yosef, it's not considered a mashke. And as we learned previously, the problem is to extract a liquid out of a solid. It only counts as a liquid if it's actually used as a liquid. If it's not used alone as a liquid, it's not a liquid, and therefore it's just like splitting a lemon in half, which we said is permitted. However, the Beis Yosef gives a second reason, and that is that when they would make lemonade, they would always squeeze the lemons straight into the water-sugar mixture. It never gets squeezed out alone, and therefore it's okay. And again, you go through the whole same thing, that it's not considered a mashke because it never stands alone. And Mishnah Berurah notes that while the first reason still applies today, that even today nobody drinks lemon juice, as far as I know, straight. However, the second does not apply, because the way lemon juice is produced nowadays is that it is produced alone in its own barrel and then later mixed with the sugar and the water. And therefore, the Mishnah Berurah says it's a problem to squeeze out lemon juice into an empty vessel.
Hold on, so squeezing a lemon onto salad or fish on Shabbos would be a problem?
Okay, not necessarily. The Gemara says that even though squeezing out juices is a problem, to squeeze the juice straight onto food, that would be okay. Why is that? The explanation is that since the juice never stands alone, it's not considered a mashke. It just comes out of the ochel, it comes out of the lemon or the other fruit, and goes straight into another food. It's ochel mitoch ochel, and that will be permitted. The only issue is to extract a mashke, and since it never stands alone as a mashke, it's okay, and it's not a violation of mufari. The Shulchan Aruch does quote the opinion of Reuven who disagrees for a variety of reasons, and the Mishnah Berurah says that it is a good chumrah to be careful and not squeeze out straight into food. However, most poskim, including the חייא and the Shmir Shabbos Hilchos, say that one would only have to be concerned for grapes and olives, which would be a problem in Torah. But for all other liquids, which would not be a problem in Torah, one would not have to be machmir. And therefore, it is permitted to squeeze lemons onto the fish or onto the salad because it is being squeezed straight into food and not standing alone as a liquid. To summarize how to use lemons on Shabbos, squeeze out lemons alone, that's for sure a problem. Even to go directly into tea is a problem because that's going into another liquid. So that does end up becoming mashke mitoch ochel, a liquid out of food. Onto fish, as we just said, is permitted. What about putting it onto your sugar to then put it into the tea? So for most poskim, including the Mishnah Berurah, say that at the end of the day, it's being squeezed onto sugar, it's squeezed onto food, and therefore it is permitted. Now, the last option to use the lemon is to put it directly into the tea. The Gemara says that any time you have liquids that come out of a fruit, it's potentially a gezerah midarabanan of mashkin shazav. Why is that? If we allow you to benefit from the liquid that comes out, even if it comes out on its own, you might be tempted to squeeze out some more. So we don't want you doing that, and therefore Chazal prohibited the liquids that came out on their own. However, the Gemara says that it only applies in two situations, either grapes and olives always, or fruits that you bring into your house for the purpose of squeezing. Now, lemons you do have in your house for the purpose of squeezing, and therefore it should be a problem. However, the Rishonim note that since the juice comes out directly into the tea and never stands alone, we don't have this gezer of mashkin shazav. Should be noted though, you cannot squeeze the lemon out with your spoon by pressing it against the side of the cup, because then it's not about a gezer of mashkin shazavu, then it's about actively doing mefarik. You're extracting the liquid, and there we don't have a heter of going directly into the tea. As an aside, I should note that if you put fruit into your salad and now you have some juice on the bottom, that's okay because those fruit were meant to be eaten. The juice that flows on its own is permitted in that case.
Okay, and one more thing we know that the Gemara distinguishes between fruits that are created with juice inside them and other types of food that we insert juices into them and then try to extract those juices from them.
Right, so we mentioned earlier, pickles would be a good example, or if you dipped your challah in soup or wine or something like that. So the Gemara says that probably midirabanan, you would not be allowed to squeeze out those foods in order to make use of the liquid. For example, if you want more pickle juice, you can't squeeze out the pickles. However, if the reason you squeeze it is simply to enhance the food, to get it out, it's soche leibud, it's going to waste, therefore it would be permitted. So if you have a pickle that's too juicy, or if you have some tuna fish that's too liquidy, it would be permitted to squeeze it out in order to make it taste a little better.
Okay, great. We'll just note that we haven't covered all the applications of sochet because in some situations it interacts with another melacha called libun. We'll see that in the future.
I think we could say though, for squeezing fruits, we've got that covered.
Amazing, wonderful. So we'll talk again next week.
Looking forward to it. It's always a pleasure.
Great.